Colleagues, first of all, let me say that this floor should be embraced as a place where we can all agree to disagree, and that's the way democracy works. And just because some of us may have some negative comments about the budget doesn't mean that we're enemies of the state of California. It's just that many of us may feel that we can do better than we're doing. And I'm sure many of you think this is a great budget. I don't think it's a great budget. I think it's an election year budget, and I'll explain why. I first want to thank the budget chair for her hard work. I had the pleasure of working with her on Budget Sub 3 for a number of years, and I know about her dedication to the people of the state of California, especially people that have limited means, the people that we really should be doing our best to look after. I also want to thank all the subcommittee chairs, especially the one that I serve with, my good friend from Sacramento and Monterey. It's an honor to work with you gentlemen and to hear some of the very moving stories of people that have been hurt in past budgets, that we're only looking for some restoration to the services so that they can do better at delivering humanitarian care to so many people in our state that need it. And to all the senators that were on the budget subcommittees, thank you for your help, and certainly the conferees on both sides of the aisle. I know you spent many, many hours, and I know it's very challenging because we have to deal in a bicameral way when the budget gets done, and we have to deal with a very strong-willed governor, which makes things even more challenging. You know, the state budget is about our priorities, and it's very reflective of our values. And I think there's some very good positive elements to the budget. As one that's been in the private sector for now 37 years and owning about a dozen businesses, I know the importance of fiscal responsibility. I know the importance of putting away money for times in which business may not be as strong as you wish it could be. And one of the main reasons why many small businesses fail is because they don't properly put away for their sustenance as they're building their business or don't have enough in reserve when things go south. So I applaud this legislature, and I applaud this governor for reaching the goal of putting 10% of an annual budget away in one of our rainy day funds, $14 billion. And this is especially important because we know that the economy runs in cycles. And I will tell you, serving on Labor Committee and seeing some very challenging business regulatory laws, we are, again, putting uncertainty in the minds of many small businesses and entrepreneurs who employ millions of people in this state that are considering leaving the state. We've increased funding for water infrastructure, even though it's not enough. We had a goal in the Senate, and I worked closely with my friend from Monterey, that we were going to deliver potable drinking water to every citizen in the state of California. We can afford more, my friends, than the $295 million to do that. I mean, after all, we have $10 billion above and beyond what we expected. And is water not an important enough commodity to ensure that every Californian gets it? Do we have to tax people for every elective responsibility that we want to assume in the state of California? I would opine that we don't. Remember, we had Prop 30 taxes that were supposed to be temporary taxes. We had a governor who said, we're not going to support any taxes unless it comes from the people. Both of those were very disingenuous comments. Prop 30 was extended, creating a windfall for the state of California, and sure enough, we put taxes through on this floor that did not originate from the people, as was promised by our governor. We've added $150 million for additional career technical education, which I think is fantastic. but I'm concerned that this is not enough, since we really need to add funding for community colleges that provide the backbone for infrastructure to build a better trained workforce. That's why they call it community colleges. They're meant to be two-year colleges. They weren't meant to be four-year colleges. And they're supposed to mimic the needs of a community so we can train kids that don't want to go to four-year universities with the job skills so that they can raise a family and hopefully afford to buy a home. But sadly, the majority party here in Sacramento has chosen to go on yet another spending spree that puts future budgets in jeopardy, especially if we see a downturn in income tax receipts, which we know is very volatile. And we know that that's coming because we continue to be one of the highest tax states, if not the highest tax state in the country. But even with nearly $10 billion in unanticipated revenues, this budget fails to right prior wrongs and fails to restore funding to some of the most vulnerable populations that we all represent. And we could all be heroes because quantitatively, the funds to restore a lot of these programs are really small. Many of us can refer to that as budget dust. It's insignificant when you look at the budget surpluses that we have, and then qualitatively take these programs and inspire a better quality of life for people that we care about. It's amazing to me that 1 out of 3 people in the state of California are enrolled in the Medi-Cal program. I think when I started my pharmacy career in 1983 with my first pharmacy, I think about 12% of the state was enrolled in this program. And yet, year after year that I've been here, colleagues, I have advocated that we have to increase the Medi-Cal rates to physicians because we have too many people that are promised health care that can't deliver it, and yet it works against us because where they do get it, in the emergency rooms, costs us 10 times as much. We're penny wise and dollar foolish. I don't understand why we cannot raise the Medi-Cal fees so that poor people can get the kind of health care that you get with great benefits here in the state of California and many get in the private sector. If doctors can't afford to accept Medi-Cal patients, we shouldn't be surprised at all that they actually go without seeing a doctor, and I think it's wrong. My friends, we also talked about the slashes in Medi-Cal coverage benefits when we went into the economic crisis. Such services as audiology, incontinence creams and washes for our growing elderly population, optician optical lab services, podiatry services, ensuring that we're taking care of people's feet that are diabetics, unless I'm missing something, Madam Chair. You're looking at me kind of funny. Is that back in? Okay, if those are back in, then I will correct myself. It was in my notes that they were taken out. If they're back in, I applaud the legislature for keeping these things into the budget. We have some very dedicated workers in the state of California that take care of our disadvantaged, developmentally disadvantaged communities that saw massive cuts to their payments 10 years ago and haven't seen a full restoration of those cuts. We have our centers in the state of California, and one in particular in San Bernardino that has shared with me, these special centers that take care of our autistic children, that they can't let out contracts because there's nobody to take those contracts because we haven't upgraded their fees in over a decade. We need to increase those fees so we can take care of our developmentally disabled communities. We have the money to help those who serve the men, women, and families who are the most vulnerable people, but this budget fails to right the prior wrongs and restore the funding. This budget continues to throw money down the drain to fund the high-speed rail boondoggle that all of us know will never get built, will never get used, and will be just nothing more than a local commuter rail between a couple of cities. $1.1 billion is being spent from cap and trade and bond funds to go what could be arguably called America's biggest public infrastructure disaster, while at the same time our roads are crumbling, our bridges are crumbling, and traffic is grinding to a halt, creating one of the worst qualities of life of any of the 50 states if you have to commute to and from work. My friends, I don't think that Medi-Cal has been a great model in the way that we've implemented it recently, but we see that we are doing a study, we're working towards going towards a government-sponsored single-payer healthcare system that will put our private sector businesses out of business and our healthcare decisions in the hands of the same people who run our Medi-Cal system, and I just think that's a big mistake. I understand that those who depend on our state's welfare system are facing harder conditions due to the extremely high cost of living in our state. I would argue that we should make it easier for them to get trained to find a job in the 21st century. My friends, we have the dubious distinction of having 13% of the people that live in the United States living in the state of California, and yet we have 1/3 of the nation's welfare. We cannot keep making people dependent on government assistance because it's the best way to preserve poverty and reliance on government for their basic needs. Instead, I believe that we should be drug testing anybody that is on welfare, and we should have a proactive, verifiable, job-seeking requirement of anybody that is on welfare in the state of California. But I also believe that we should be providing comprehensive training to welfare recipients. I believe that we should provide tax credits to small businesses who hire and train people who are looking to come off public assistance. We should also adopt policies that don't deny people benefits if they fall just even slightly below some arbitrary income line, which has been very punitive to many of our friends. We should encourage work. The current budget continues a policy that encourages people to stay out of the workforce at a time when there are more jobs in the United States than people to fill them. Simply keeping people dependent on getting government money while not working does not reflect the values that makes California such a great state. You know, we also value public safety. And we know that human trafficking is a big issue in our state and in our country, and we need to restore the funding, the $10 million in grants, to ensure that local law enforcement grants can be given so we can stop this human trafficking debacle. We also have seen in the past few years a multitude of gun bills, and yet we still don't provide the Attorney General enough money to clear the APPS backlog to get guns out of the hands of dangerous people instead of continually passing laws taking guns out of law-abiding citizens. My friends, we should be united to make sure the Attorney General has those funds to get those dangerous guns out of the hands of criminals. This is certainly not the worst budget I could have ever imagined. But in a year where we have record revenues, our general fund is nearly $139 billion, and our total spending is more than $300 billion. I believe we could have done a much better job of prioritizing our spending. After all, I just don't understand why we have such a complicated reserve fund structure that puts money into no fewer than 5 different reserve accounts. And why is that? Is it because the legislature wants to get around the GAN limit that was originally put in place to make sure that taxpayers weren't overtaxed by saying, when you reach that certain threshold and go beyond it, that you have to lower the state sales tax by 1/4 point? Is there anything wrong with giving back to our citizens that have been burdened with the highest taxes in the country? Even though we're a big state with a massive budget, it just seems to me that our priorities aren't really that complicated. We should pay for the things we need to help those who can't help themselves. We should pay for programs to keep people safe. We should pay for infrastructure within our existing funds that allows people to get from point A to point B without ruining their cars on roads filled with cracks and potholes. I really wish I could stand here and vote for this budget, but I just don't believe it reflects the higher values that my district holds. And for those reasons, I request a no vote.